Hi, welcome back to 16 Tank Workshop. In recent videos I showed you my new addition to the collection, the Panzer III from Armortek. In the first two videos I took the model apart, and in the third video I started cleaning it and preparing it for building. In this video we're going to build it up to this level, the lower hull. Here we have the base of the Panzer III. It's made in steel, and these aluminium bars are the retainers for the torsion bar suspension. The brass bushings were already glued in. I haven't disturbed them, I've just cleaned them. The grub screws hold the torsion bars in from the opposite side. The instructions recommend fitting the base of the tank to the suspension bars with M4 hex head screws. To make the base a bit cleaner, I'm going to use countersunk screws. So the first thing to do will be to make appropriate size countersinks for the screws. Continue to make more countersinks all the way around. To fit the screws into the suspension bar, I'm using a little bit of blue thread lock. It'll just hold them a bit more secure, but it's still easy enough to remove the screws if ever I need to. So now the countersunk screws are fitted all around. It's much neater than the hex heads. And now we flip the base the other way around. You can see the suspension bars are fitted. This is where the torsion bars will come through, and they'll be secured with these grub screws. I've got my Panzer III instructions in PDF form. The first 11 pages are basically basic instructions and an inventory. So now I'm working on the hull. It gives you a list of the hull parts and also the fasteners that you'll need to apply. Next, the suspension bars to the hull sides uses M4 by 10 countersunk screws, and it uses 14 of those. When disassembling the hull, I thought there were a few screws missing because the back was a bit loose. But I've actually noticed there is no hole here for a screw, so I'll have to drill in here and tap for M4. It's the same on the other side. There should be 7 screws holding on each side, but there's only 6 holes, although I do have the countersunk hole for a bolt. That's manufacturing error number 1. By not paying attention to the instructions, I've assembled the sides onto the lower hull, but it says in the instructions you must fit the bump stops, at least the screws for the bump stops first. The lower screws are behind the suspension bar. I'll have to take the sides off again and refit them later. But one other thing. Looking at the swing arm and the position of the bump stops, the position for the bump stops is not really good. There's no way in reality that the swing arms would move this much. These are far too high and need to be repositioned. Looking at some drawings, I can see that this should also be angled slightly. I would say this position would be better. So I'm going to take the whole sides off and re-drill for the bump stops. Here you can see I've fitted the screws that will retain the bump stops, and I put them in new locations. I'll fill up the old holes with some filler. Next will be to fit the front and rear armour plates. Here's the front, 2 of the front armour plates and 1 of the rear armour plates. These armour plates fit in place with these small steel brackets, and they're held in place with M3 countersunk screws, 12mm and 10mm. Here I'm fitting the brackets. They're loosely fitted at the moment. Everything goes together loosely and is tightened up at the end. But these brackets will attach to the front armour and the top deck. I've left a slight chamfer on the edges of these armour sections. This will give a space for the milliput welds to bond in. So here we have the basic lower hull assembled. These are the rear idler mounts. They were fairly dirty. All the steel parts were badly rusted, but the evaporust has cleaned up all the steel really well, and I've used alcohol to clean the aluminium parts. I'm going to take some of the very sharp edges off, but apart from that they're not too bad. These mounts hold the bottom rear plate on. Here are the rear idler adjusters, etch primed and assembled. They're quite clean now. They will retain the rear lower armour. Here we have the main drive housing. This one, I've taken the sharp edges off and I've textured it and also put some recesses in here for the bolts. Here's the basic. If you were watching one of the earlier videos when I was taking the vehicle apart, I noticed that the shaft on one of the housings hadn't been securely attached. It fits on bearings, 2 bearings. You need to use adhesive to stick the bearings into the housing itself on the outer race, but then on the inner race that needs adhesive as well to attach it to the shaft. It's not 100% clear in the instructions, but you really do need to do that. Otherwise the shaft can move in and out on the bearings. It can move laterally. In this case the gear had rubbed against the side of the hull a few times and put some scratch marks on it. That's because the gear wasn't secure in the housing. So I've now used a strong adhesive to attach the bearing both to the inside of the housing and also onto the shaft. The bearing is free to rotate, but it won't move laterally. I use this tool quite a bit. It's a power file for taking edges off. Also the machining marks, it'll take them off very easily. The power file has taken all the hard edges off. Next, I'll make the recesses for the bolt holes. And now I'll finish off the texturing with one of these Dremel tools. So that's the two drive housings now ready to etch prime. Here you can see some of the scarring marks where the gear hadn't been fitted properly onto the shaft. The instructions say that if you're building the vehicle and don't have the motion pack yet, it'll be necessary to remove the main drive housing. Here we have the motor mounts. These come with the motion pack, and they fit to the inside using cap head screws. One of the cap head screws is actually inside the drive housing, so that's why you would need to remove it. But I have the motion pack, so I'm going to fit the motor mounts now. The motor mount is held in place with 4 M5x12 countersunk screws. And that's the first motor mount in place. And here we have the main drive cover fitted, and retaining bolts are fairly flush, also some texture. And next we have the mounts for the return rollers, textured similar to the other parts. There's bearings and bushes fitted inside, so they roll nicely. I'll be doing some cast lettering on these as well, and I want to fit them using castellated nuts. So that's the return rollers in place. They're held on with castellated nuts. Unfortunately, I don't have enough to finish the whole job. With the weight of the model starting to increase with parts being added, I've now taken it down off the table. I've got it on one of my jacks. This trolley is on wheels, so it's very convenient for spinning around. The return roller mounts have castellated nuts fitted, although I need some more castellated nuts to finish the job. Motor mounts are in place. At this stage, the angle along here should be fitted as well. But I'm not too happy with it. I'm not too happy with the position of some of the screw holes. But it's not actually long enough. It should go right down to the front of the glasses plate. This will be the main reference I'll be using for building this vehicle, by Thomas Jentz and Hilary Doyle. It's got some great drawings. This is the version of the Panzer III that I'll be working on. It's Panzer IIIL. It best fits the components supplied with the kit. You get some great scale drawings in this book in 1/35th scale and 1/10th scale for some of the smaller parts. You can see here that the piece of bracket holding the upper to the lower hull sections is scalloped. Later versions did just have a piece of plain angle. My version will have this scalloped angle. So that'll be the next thing to work on. Because the supplied angles were not long enough, I've ordered some more aluminium angle. I'll use this for something else. In the next video, some of the items I'll be working at are the angle connecting the upper and lower hulls, and also putting some details on the return rollers. The Panzer III kit, a large number of cone head bolts has securing parts. So I'm going to try and make some dummy cone heads. There's many of them along the back here and along the side of the hull. They're present all over the vehicle. But we'll try to make some cone heads in the next episode. As we progress, I'll need a lot more of these castellated nuts as well. So it's whether to buy some or try to make some. There'll be quite a few needed for this project. These access hatches at the front, they're not actually crew hatches. They're to access the braking and transmission system. But looking at the drawings in Panzer Tracts, this hatch should be wider. They're not both the same size. So I'll need to possibly cut this section out a bit and make a bigger hatch. We'll also be working on the escape hatches on the side. These hatches were deleted from the later version of the Panzer III, but in mine they're still present. So thanks for watching. That's all for this video. Please remember to hit that subscribe button and also the like button. It'll keep you up to date with future videos. I'll put up a couple of videos here, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.